Okay, so in this tutorial we're basically just going to be looking at the space that you use to work with Unreal, as well as a couple of other bits and pieces, but this one's mainly about just understanding what exactly you're looking at when you open up Unreal. So you've got a bunch of different windows that you can resize to however you see fit. You can move them around, but we'll get to that in a bit. I'm just going to go through what each section is and what it's used for. So the thing in the middle, the main thing, is the viewport, which is this. So if you right click and drag around, you'll be able to look around this world. If you use WAS and D, you can move around as you would expect to. Clicking just left click is just panning left and right. Click both left and right to be able to pan around side to side. Middle mouse wheel is your zoom, and there's some other bits and pieces that are ways to navigate, but that's basically the gist on how to navigate the viewport. This space is used for manipulating objects within your scene. So basically for placing where things are in your game world. So for example, this cube, I can move this cube around in this viewport. It's also used for things like moving them around, rotating them, scaling, etc. This is the space in which you build your level, and it's just referred to as the viewport. There's different ways you can look at your level, which I'll come to later on. In fact, I'll just quickly do them now. So if you look at, there's a lot of different options along the top here. This first one, or this very first one, is just a bunch of different options. We don't need to worry about those, but this next one that says perspective on, you can choose to change the perspective at which you're looking your level at. So if I decide to look at my level from the top, it's just grey, but if I middle mouse wheel zoom out, you can see that this is a top-down representation of the level. So these little green sections are the cubes, and these bits are the walls. If you zoom in, you can see the player character, and I can do that from the side as well. So this is handy if you wanted to check something. It's important to note that the way you navigate this space is slightly different. So right clicking will be a select tool rather than panning around, and if you left click will select, right click will click and drag around, and middle mouse wheel zooms it around. I'm just going to move this back to perspective for now. You've also got different options here in terms of what is drawn in the scene view, what is shown. So at the minute it's set to lit, so this is what the game as close enough will look like when the game starts. Yeah, I think you can press G to get the view, or like a true view of the game, what the game will look like. So get rid of all like the little icons and stuff. So this is what the player will see, or this is what will be visible to the player. Press G again, you can toggle that back on. But yeah, if I select unlit, then this is what the level looks like with zero lighting. So you can see these boxes are like the same colour, so they're pretty impossible to sort of tell where the edges are. So that's, if we use a lit view, we can tell that. And show, basically you can edit what you see. A lot of this stuff you won't need to worry about. The stuff up here is more you need to worry about when you're manipulating objects in the scene, which we'll come to in a bit. The one thing I will mention is the one on the far right, the camera speed. So say you want to be able to move around the level a lot faster, just make that a bit faster, and then when you use WAS and D, you'll shoot around the level. So say you've got a large level and you want to move around it quickly, that's the way you do it, or set it to a 1 if you want to have a really slow movement. If you've got an area that you want to really precisely change things, but the default speed of 4 is pretty good for this size level. So that's the viewport. The next bit I want to talk about is the toolbar. So this here at the top. It's essentially just quick access to all the important functions, like saving and running the game, opening up your blueprints, which again I'll get to in a bit. So these are just like quick shortcuts to the main important bits and pieces, including the Unreal Marketplace as well if you want to download any assets. This section down here, which is labeled Content Browser, is your content browser, and this is what you use to browse the content that's available in the game file. So all of the assets that you've got here, so any static meshes, any materials, any audio, anything like that. So so the way you navigate it is if I go to the top folder, sort of content, you've got these different folders. If I go into the start content folder, which is installed because we set this up to include the start content, then you can see the subfolders here, particles, materials. I can go into props to look at the static meshes. There's a little couch here. If you want, you can click and drag that into your scene. You can also, so you'd use this to sort of have all your audio and things like that. There's where you can filter them, so you can only see certain assets. You can search for things in here as well. There's basically just the space where all your stuff is kept for when you want to start adding the content into your scene, like I just did this with this nice orange couch. This panel on here on the left is the modes panel, and this is where you can access basic geometry, landscapes, and being able to paint foliage. So say I wanted to add let's add a cube. Well, if you go to geometry, you can see the basic stuff you can add. So if I wanted to add some linear stairs, I can just click and drag that in. So these are the difference between a geometry brush like these stairs and a static mesh like this cube is that these geometry shapes are mainly just used for blocking a level out. You wouldn't want to keep them in your game. You'd want to sort of use this to say, okay, well, how big do the stairs need to be, and then you would 3D model a set of stairs that would be that size to swap it out. This is just for like prototyping the scene. So you might be like, oh, this might work better with some spiral stairs. I don't know. Drag them in. These other tabs, landscapes, you're able to add on a huge landscape to the scene. We're not going to cover that yet in this tutorial. And foliage painting is when you're able to paint trees onto a landscape. But again, we'll come to this at a later date. The panels on the right, you've got the world outliner. So if you're familiar with Unity at all, it's basically like the hierarchy. So this essentially just contains a list of every single asset in your level, in your scene. The useful thing about this is you can add folders to sort of manage and organise things. It's good to have proper naming conventions for things and to organise them properly, because sometimes you can have lots of instances of the same object in a scene and you'll sort of lose track of where it is. So a good thing that you can do with this is, say for example, I didn't know where this couch was, so my level was full and I was like, oh, where's that couch object? If I go to here, I can go, oh well, static mesh couch, I can find it here, but I don't know where it is in my other level. So what I can do is I can click it, click it and then hover over here, or double click it. I wonder if they've changed that recently then. You used to be able to select it and then you'd have to... Oh wait, it's because I'm in the foliage setting. So you need to be in the place option to be able to do this. But yeah, I guess double clicking does the same thing if you want to highlight on a particular object. It also works if you select the object here and then press F key. and then it will focus on that particular object. Yeah, so what was happening there is because I was in foliage mode, it doesn't let you click objects and place them around. So if you're ever in a situation where, why isn't it letting me click anything? It's probably because you're not in the right mode. You need to be in place mode to manipulate the objects within your scene. Next up, we have the details panel. So if you've not got anything selected, I don't think I can deselect anything. So, but at the start of this space down here was empty. When you click on certain objects, it fills up with information about whatever you have selected. So essentially it's just detailed information about whatever objects you've got in the scene. And it's usually these components, these sort of tabs that appear, are all related to the particular object that you've got selected. So what I mean by that is all objects will have a transform. So this basically means that the transform is their location, their rotation, and their scale within the current level. So that is basically its position in the game world. So I can see here this cube's position is I've got an X value, a Y value, and a Z value. You can tell by the nice coloured arrows that this way is our Y, this is our X, and Z is up and down in Unity. You can also see the scale of this, so the actual scale of the objects. If we set this to 1, is this size. It's been rescaled. So what I did there was just click the little yellow arrow which resets it to default. So give it its default rotation, that moves it back that way. And if you do it to the position, it will move it to position 000 in the game world, which is just below. When you're moving stuff around, actually, it's probably useful to say that if you hold shift and do it, the camera will follow the object as well, rather than making it so you can move it off the camera if you wanted to do something like that. So every object will have a transform that you can manipulate. But not every object is a static mesh. So for example, if I select this text object down here, it doesn't have a static mesh component because it just has the material for what it displays in the game world, and it also has the text that's available, which you can change if you want. So the information that's available in the details panel is specific to that individual object. So if I look at this cube, it's got a material, which again you can click that, you can change it to a brick or something like that. Physics, it's got clicked, which means that when you shoot it, it will move. If that box is unchecked and you play the game, it will not move. So there's a bunch of different stuff you can edit in here which was related to that specific object. But if, for example, I added a light into the scene, then you get a different set of detail things in here. Again, every object has a transform, but because it's not a static mesh, it's not a physical object in the scene, it's just a space that creates light within the scene. You've got light options, so I can change the intensity of this light, I can change the colour of the light, I can do all sorts of different stuff. And that's where we edit our individual components within the scene. So if you'll notice here, this light is here, the text has changed when I test the game, and also this cube can no longer be moved because we unchecked that option that said physics objects, so it's not reacting at all to any physics stuff that's happening to it. So again, if you've got nothing selected, it'll just be blank, but as soon as you select an object, it gives you all the information about it. And yeah, that's about it for the space, the interface. But yeah, in the next tutorial we'll look at how you manipulate objects.